Hey, what's going on, everyone? Axel here. Today we're going to review the Retron 2 from Hyperkin, which is a emulation console that is supposed to emulate the NES and the NES and SNES, so Super Nintendo and Nintendo. If you're someone who wants a box to play Super Nintendo and Nintendo games, this is an option. Now, I bought this over a year ago, and I've spent a lot of time with it, and I have a lot of thoughts and solutions, and by the end of this video, I'm going to give you my final verdict on the product. So first of all, the product cost about $45. Price can sometimes vary with sales and such, but somewhere between $40 and $50 you're probably going to pay for it. Now, it comes with, let's go ahead and open this. I have it back in the box for purposes of this review. It comes with a few things. Basically, it'll come with a power supply, but you can also use the same one, I believe, that's on you can use a universal power supply for these things. They're really easy to find. And it comes with some composite cables, and you get the console. It's right here. And you get a couple of controllers. You get a Super Nintendo knockoff controller from Hyperkin, which here I'll unravel this so you can see. And you get a NES controller knockoff. Okay, let's go ahead and start, so I have them here, the controllers. They're garbage. You're going to want to, if you're serious about playing games on this thing, you're probably going to want to throw these away. You're definitely going to want to get a real NES, SNES controller. They just feel really cheap. The buttons are really plasticky. They just don't feel good at all. The top buttons especially, they kind of sink in and get stuck a little bit. The cord length is not all that great. As you can see, I don't know exactly how long it is, but the cord length is not that good. And one thing you'll need to see about this console if you want to play on it is you need a long cord, because if you pull the controller and this console moves just a little bit while you're playing an NES game, or I think Super Nintendo is better, but if you pull the console while you're playing an NES game, you can you can screw up the connection to the cartridge and mess up your game, so that's not good. But yeah, both of these are just really not well made. You can tell they're just thrown in here just because they have to, but they spent minimum expense on these, so you'll definitely want to get a real NES or SNES controller. Fortunately, they're pretty cheap to get those, and if you're buying this console, you're probably buying it to play your old NES or SNES games, so chances are you probably have a old controller sitting around, but if not, you can buy them used on eBay for really cheap. So let's go ahead and talk about the console. It's got the NES port here, the SNES port. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the NES port, and this is the SNES port. You've got a up and down power button, and you've got a reset. I'm sorry. This is to select between NES and SNES, and you've got a power button and a reset button here on the bottom. And this is an eject button, but it only ejects the SNES. There's no eject button for the NES, unfortunately. On the back, you have a couple input options with it. You've got your composite cables right here. There's no component, and you got S-Video. Unfortunately, big problem with this, no HDMI, which sucks. Sucks really bad, because they're starting to phase out composite on modern TVs, and to be honest, the signal from composite is just not near as good as HDMI. I understand why they didn't put it in there, though, because they're trying to sell this console for cheap. Putting in HDMI technology would have caused them to raise the price. Just from what I understand, that's more expensive to produce. The console itself is actually extremely light. Extremely light. I mean, this is basically just a box, just a plastic box with probably a tiny emulation chip in it. So there's probably really no point to this being this big in the first place. They probably could have made this a lot smaller. It's probably more this size, more for just nostalgia purposes. It comes in two different colors. It comes in this red and black that's kind of supposed to emulate the NES original colors. It also comes in a purple that's supposed to emulate the Super Nintendo color scheme. Let's go ahead and talk about the controller ports. You've got an NES controller port and an SNES controller port on both the left and right side, so you can play up to 2 players on both NES and SNES, just like you could the original consoles. Unfortunately, like I said before, these are the same connection ports for your old NES and SNES controllers, so you can use your old NES and SNES controllers no problem. And like I said, you'll definitely want to, because if you're going to get this, because the controllers included are garbage. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about a few of the good things and bad things. I found that, bottom line, the SNES worked really well. I had no problems with it. Games go in pretty easily. I haven't had many problems starting games. Almost all my games work. Fortunately, with the SNES, you got the eject button. So I think this function is really good as an SNES replacement. Now, there's one fatal flaw with this. It doesn't support games with, from what I understand, it doesn't support any games with the FX chip. So games like, I believe Star Fox is one of them. This is one of them. Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. So not all the games will work. And that's kind of similar with the NES. Some NES games won't work. Like, I've had problems getting the Tengen games to work. Like, for me, Gauntlet, I can't get the NES version of Gauntlet to work on here. I never could. Okay, just to give you a demonstration of how games go in and out, it's very similar to the SNES. It goes in just fine, ejects just fine. Now, here's the flaw with this this console. One of the big flaws. Like I said, it works fine for SNES. The big problem I have with this console is it's just crap for playing NES games. It's hard to get the games in. So here's just a copy of, MarioBrothers.com track meet, world class track meet. So they go in all right, but here's the problem. You see how this is setting? You see how it's a little tilted? You see how the console there's not much support for this cartridge here? There's nothing holding it straight up. If you leave it in the console by default, it'll tilt forward a little bit like that. And that's causing me read issues. There's no support for the top of this console to hold this cartridge straight and in place. So as a result, I'm having all kinds of problems getting this thing to read NES games. And here's another big problem. Taking games out of this thing is a bitch. This thing has a death grip. Just like if you've used the original NES and if you use the original 72-pin connector versus one of the new replacement 72-pin connectors they're making today, this definitely feels like one of the new crappy 72-pin connectors. Doesn't feel like an old original. This thing will put a death grip on your cartridges. So, and as a result, I actually broke the NES portion of this after just like 3 or 4 months of use, because just this death grip, like one of the pins inside here, inside the connection slot, broke. But yeah, I can't emphasize enough the problem with NES games. This thing has a death grip on the carts, and I feel like I'm going to break this thing a lot of times just because of how light it is. So there's that problem. So I really hate this thing for playing NES games. What else do I want to say about this thing? I think I've already said some of the games don't work. Like I've had problems getting Tengen games to work on the NES, and then like I said before, FX chip games on the SNES, like Star Fox. I haven't started Star Fox, but Super Mario RPG I have not been able to get to work. Next, I want to show you some sample gameplay footage so you can get a look for yourself as to the quality of the image and the sound. I'm running this through an Elgato HD capture card. I myself can't tell a big difference between the quality of the sound and images of real SNES and NES consoles and the Retron 2. I've heard some people say that there is a difference slightly in the image quality and sound quality of this emulation console. My best guess is that most people won't be able to tell the difference. Now, I will tell you one thing. If you're planning to run this through a modern HD TV flat screen, it's probably not going to look too well, and that's not really the console's fault. That's more the fact that composite signal just does not clean up very well on modern day TV. So keep that in mind. You might want to consider playing this console through an old school CRTV. So let's go ahead and talk about, do I recommend you buy this thing? My answer to that is no. There's just so many better options these days. First of all, let's just throw out the option where if you're a new collector or you're someone who's just getting into these old retro games, you don't really want to go this route. It doesn't make sense. There's so many good emulation options out now. I know a lot of people, there's all kinds of different modded consoles that can get full NES, SNES libraries on there for free, and I know a lot of people don't like emulation because it's kind of iffy whether it's legal. A lot of people like collecting the hardware, physical hardware games, and that's fine. But for those people, I would say just buy a regular SNES or Super Nintendo. You can go down to retro game shops and get a regular NES with a good 72-pin connector for like $50. You can look on eBay, get them for pretty cheap. Super Nintendos, I believe, they're around the same. There's also all kinds of better emulation options. Like the NES Classic Edition. I don't know, it's still having stock problems with Nintendo, but that's a better option because even though it only has 30 games, you have all the best games. It's a lot cheaper deal. If you're a new collector who doesn't have any physical games, it's better to go that route because not only do you get like a lot of the best games on the NES, you get an HDMI signal. And like I said, one of the other big flaws of this thing is it's composite and S video only. So no HDMI signal, which sucks. If you have a new 4K TV, you might not be able to even use this thing on it. So that sucks. So I think who this really appeals to is people who already have a large collection of physical NES or SNES games, and either their old console broke or they sold it and want to get back into it for cheap and just want to play their old games again. This might be an okay option. But I think for a lot of people, they're going to either be into NES or SNES. So if you're someone who's really big into SNES and you get back into it, I would say just buy a used Super Nintendo. Likewise, if you want to get into the NES and and only the NES, I would say just buy a regular NES. Really, this only appeals to someone who might want to get into both consoles at the same time and only wants to buy physical and wants to save like $40. Because even if you buy both a regular SNES and a used NES, you could probably get that for like $100, both of them. So yeah, I would say either don't skip this. And on top of it, the quality's crap. NES games don't play well. And a lot of the games, not a lot, but some of the games won't even play. So yeah, overall, I would say either just skip this entirely and just get a regular NES or SNES if you're into the retro physical game collection community, if you're getting into that. Or if you're someone who just wants to play the games, I would say go emulation or go with something like the NES Classic Edition. Or, not even that. Another good point is, for so many consoles now, they have game collection. They have releases on modern consoles like the Xbox One, PS4, even back further, like PS3, PS2 had a lot of old classic game collections. I know, like the PS2 had a lot of games where they were collections of these old games. So you get like 30 classic SNES games or whatever on a PS2 disc. I know the Xbox One recently came out with a Mega Man collection that had all of the old Mega Man games, like Mega Man 1 through 6, I think, plus maybe the X2 games on a Xbox One disc. So there's so many good options these days, and also there's always stuff like Nintendo's Virtual Console if you want to go that route. There's just so many better options than this. So I have to say, pass on it. Either go with real NES, SNES, or go with one of the far superior digital or other emulation or ROM options. So yeah. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this review. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this video, please hit the subscribe button below and subscribe to my channel. I create a lot of various types of gaming related videos. So please check me out. Check out my videos. I would really appreciate it. And also throw this video a like if you did enjoy. That's all for today. You all have a good one. See ya.